Okay, so good afternoon, all distinguished guests. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think Ibu Lani and I don't need to introduce ourselves again, yeah? It's been introduced before. Well, it's an honor for us to share with you about the issue that we as educators will probably face in current era and also in the next few years, perhaps. So the topic that we are going to discuss today is becoming relevant again, student-teachers competences. This is actually about help to reflect, to help us reflect to what extent we or our students have been equipped with the competencies to face Industry 4.0 or Society 5.0. All of us see that technology is developing rapidly, and coupled with this pandemic that has made all activities online based, the role of technology has become very large. And it's undeniable that students can search for information from various sources on the internet. And it's easy and accessible. Just type and click, all information are available there, right? People can creatively produce something relying on the guidance from YouTube. For example, we can see here, by learning from the internet, 3 teenagers successfully make a robot that can help COVID-19 patients. And also we can see the other examples. So what about the role of teacher? Teachers are no longer the only source of knowledge and do not determine what and how to learn. And then another factor is related to our education system. From 2022 to 2024, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology provides 3 curriculum options that can be applied in schools. One of them is prototype curriculum. It is competency-based curriculum to support learning recovery from the learning loss by implementing project-based learning, which is considered important for student character development because it provides opportunities for the students to learn through experience. The expectation through the prototype curriculum helps to improve the quality of education. However, improvement should not only be made to the curriculum, but also the quality of the teachers. So now the question is, what about our position as educators or institution that train student teacher or how to prepare their readiness? Once I read an article that studied the student teachers' readiness to face Society 5.0 challenges. There is one question. Are they ready to teach with competencies needed? This study is conducted in Sumatra and Java. The participants were around 300 something. There were 4 competencies being tested, and the result showed that among 4 competencies, curiosity is in the lowest, gaining 66.84% and considered as enough. So what's wrong if student teachers have low curiosity? Is it that important? Well, the answer will be found in the discussion with Ibu Lani. Ibu Lani, please.
Okay, thank you, Bu Indri, for opening the presentation. Now I'm going to continue the presentation. So we start our presentation with the big question. Why is curiosity important? Now, to be able to see the importance of curiosity in learning, we begin our discussion with the learning theory, because the learning theory is developed to describe the process of learning. And in accordance with the current situation, our discussion is based on connectivism, which is the learning theory developed for the digital age. Connectivism was first proposed in around 2004 or 2005 by George Simmons and Stephen Downes. Simmons and Downes developed connectivism to explain the process of learning in a digital age. As the result of the advancements in digital technology, information, which is the source of knowledge, now is open and accessible for everyone. And then what does matter is this. Students, educators, and learners need to know how to assess and use them properly and appropriately. So there is no problem now in assessing information. The question is whether we are able to use that information because they are already available on the internet. So according to connectivism, learning happens when there are connections, because connections enable information transfer. Due to the vast amount of available information in the connections, to form knowledge, one needs to be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn the information. So that's basically the idea of connectivism. Now let's talk further about connectivism. So actually, when we talk about connectivism, there are 8 principles of connectivism. And then 3 of them are actually tightly related. So if we see point 2, point 5, and point 6, they are all about connections. Then we will discuss the 3 principles together. Yeah. So we will discuss this one by one. I will start with the first principle. Okay, this one. So the first principle is learning and knowledge rest in the diversity of opinions. In academic context, we actually already know the importance of freedom of speech and open-mindedness. If everyone can articulate their opinions and ideas without fear of being mocked, judged, or bullied, then people will be able to learn from each other. Why is it important to hear from different perspectives? Because there are always different ways to see one issue. And sometimes, or maybe often, the sides that the majority fail to see are the fundamental issues. As mentioned in the slide, actually, we already have one good instance of learning and knowledge, which is formed when facts and opinions are shared, which is from Wikipedia. So as mentioned by 𝕒𝕒𝕒𝕠𝕟, because there are many users fact-checking each other's works in Wikipedia, the review practices build the community of users themselves, work to maintain the integrity of the articles that are written. Yeah, because people can just edit and revise the content of Wikipedia. Eventually, there will be equilibrium. Like the article will be stable, like everyone then agree upon something. So that's a very good example of how learning and eventually knowledge is formed when people can share ideas together. Yeah, and then the second principles, and actually this is the one in which all the 3 principles are discussed together. These are the 3 principles which are related to connection. Now, so these 3 principles highlight the importance of connections in the process of learning and forming knowledge. But of course, the question is, how can connections promote learning and form knowledge? So it is important to point out that it's not the connection itself that promotes learning and form knowledge. It is the ability to connect the data and information sources and make meaning from that data. With more connections, one has more access for data or information. And having more data or information means more opportunity for learning and forming knowledge. But that requires the ability to process the data properly. And this is the point where we learn the importance of knowing data literacy skills. So data literacy skills refer to the ability to read, work with, and analyze and communicate data. And then one way to develop data literacy among students is by employing project-based learning. So I think Prof. Saleh already talked about the project-based learning, and later we will also discuss further about the project-based learning. So this is a very important learning model, yeah, these days, teaching model these days. So our point here is that connections can promote learning and form knowledge if learners are equipped with data literacy skills so that they are able to process the vast amount of information properly. Now let's move on to the next principle, which is that learning may reside in non-human appliances. Okay, as educators, have you ever been in these situations? Okay, you can read that. So the question is, how did you feel when you are in this situation? And what did you do when you deal with this kind of situation? So all of this situation, and I'm sure that there are more, are the implication when students have the power to learn on their own, aided by a powerful search engine. You can name it Mbah Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, yeah, nowadays. And then all of the social media, we have Facebook group, we have website forum. Yeah, so our learners actually can learn everything from internet. Then in this situation, of course, we need to think of our roles, rethink of our roles as teachers in helping our learners to learn, basically. Yeah. So now let's go to the next principle, which is the capacity to know more is more critical than what is currently known. Our discussion of connectivism begins with the questions of the importance of curiosity. Why is curiosity important? Because the process of, okay, let me try to open all of this, okay. Because the process of acquiring information, sorry, I think I skipped something. Because the process of acquiring information begins with, we learn to process, Because the process of acquiring the skills together and process information begins with curiosity. Curiosity triggers one to have interest in things, which is followed by the action of doing observation and gathering information about the things that they are interested in. So that's why it is important to nurture our learners' curiosity, because having curiosity will make them think critically about what they know and why they think they know it, and further inspire them to know more. Then the question is how to nurture our learners' curiosity. Then we need to encourage and stimulate our students to conduct deep research, for instance, by exposing them to content available through library database and internet search, and then evaluate all of those information. Yeah. Okay, so that's about the curiosity part. Now let's go to the next principle, which is currency. Currency refers to accurate and up-to-date knowledge. So currency is the intent of all connectivist learning activities. So something that we have to understand now is the fact that information come and goes rapidly and becomes more rapidly this year. Half of what is known today was not known 10 years ago. And correspondingly, half of the current knowledge will become obsolete or irrelevant maybe in 2 or 3 years now, because information really changes rapidly these days. Now everyone has access for up-to-date information, but the big questions are always the same. Does everyone know how to access those up-to-date information? And then, does everyone know how to analyze the accuracy of the information critically? These days, the problem is not finding information. These days, the problem is to figure out which information is right, accurate, which information is false or hoax, I guess. Yeah, and so it's part of our task as educators to help our learners to do these two things. Yeah. Okay, so for the last principles, decision making is itself a learning process. This is still related to the fact that information comes and goes very rapidly these days. News is updated in real time now. Then this means there is so much information to learn, process, and analyze at one point in one time. And I guess everyone actually maybe has felt this by this time, like overwhelmed by so much information. Too much information will only confuse us. It will distract our students from learning the essentials. That's why decision making is another important skill to master. Decision making in what? So all these four, yeah. They have to learn what information they need to learn at the time, and where should I learn this? When should I learn this? From whom should I learn this? And can I trust this information? Yeah. Okay, so those are the 8 principles of connectivism. Perhaps you wonder why our discussion so far revolves around connectivism. Because the principle of connectivism correspond to what we experience these days. We are now in the society 4.0. We use internet to search for, retrieve, analyze information or data, to access the cloud service. Ms. Indri and I prepared this presentation by using G-Docs. I use Spotify to listen to music. So at this point, we collect information via the internet, and then we analyze it. We as humans analyze it. But soon, very, very soon, we will come to the society 5.0, in which the big data will be accumulated in the internet, and then the one that do the analysis will be artificial intelligence. And then, we actually as humans use data from that has been analyzed by artificial intelligence. So then in the near future, there will be more disruptions in the workforce, as there are more things that will be taken over by the technology. Then of course, the big question is how to prepare our young generation for the challenges that they will face in society 4.0 and society 5.0. Now let's go back to the teachers' roles. These are the things that our teacher need to teach to our students. Yeah, all of this, and this is not an exhaustive list, but definitely there will be more. But then to summarize all of this, we will follow what Yulianto said in his argument that teachers' roles in society 5.0 are facilitator, motivator, inspirator, mentor, developer of imagination, creativity, character values, teamwork, and social empathy, and so on. And there are many more, of course. So then the next question is how to prepare the current student teachers for all of these roles, because it will be there. I know there are many university students who are the participants here. So the question is how to prepare you to become this kind of teachers in the next few years. Yeah. So something that we learned from the study by 𝕒 and Kim is that apparently having the knowledge is not enough. Professor Zaleha already mentioned in the previous presentation Having knowledge is not enough. Being aware is not enough, because even if you already have the knowledge, even if you already have the skill, the question is whether you are able to transfer that. So in So and Kim's study, it turns out that student teacher who already know about how to teach and familiar with technology still cannot create lesson plan that integrate technology to the teaching. Yeah. So there are more needed. In addition, we also need student teacher with the right mentality for learning, critical thinking, curiousness, open-mindedness, and with the soft skill, something like interpersonal skills, communication, teamwork, collaboration, and also student teachers who are able to process data, have data literacy skills. So how to prepare students with these properties? Now, we would like to point out the importance of the student teacher's experience as learners as one of the factors that contribute to the way they teach in the future. So people in the past sometimes say like, oh, faculty teach the way they were taught. Teacher teach the way they were taught, but apparently it's not. One of the important factors that contribute is the teachers' experience as the learners when they learn in the past. That's something that will shape the way they teach in the future. So therefore, we assume that it is important for us to employ teaching models which make student teacher experience the mentality, the soft skills, and the soft skills when they learn. And these can be achieved if we employ the teaching methods that promote what we call as student agency. Yeah, you can read the definition of student agency later. So far, we know that there are like 5 teaching methods mentioned around that can promote student agency: project-based, problem-based, inquiry-based, case-based, and then phenomenon-based learning. We put all of this information here. Definitely, we won't have time to discuss 5 of them, but we put it here so that later maybe you can study, like search for them yourself. That's another type of students agency. But then we will focus on the project-based learning teaching model that we have tried to employ in our department for the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah. So I guess this will be shared by Ibu Indri again.
Okay, thank you, Bulani. Yeah, now from theoretical, we move into practical thing. Yeah, so I'd like to share how student teachers in our study program experience project-based learning. This is one of the courses that I taught, namely curriculum and materials development. The outcome of the course is students have to produce English learning modules. And there are 10 learning objectives there, we call as CPMK, yeah, or the learning objectives. And this course was also integrated with language assessment course at that time. All right, so in the beginning, I start with the question. Next, please, Bu. Yeah, what does the English learning module look like? Then in the class, students had discussion about that. They start questioning what level of students will be addressed, how can get information, is it online or offline learning, and so on and so forth. This process triggers the students to be curious about what and how they are going to do in the project. Through the discussion, they are also involved in giving opinions, letting them brainstorming any ideas appeared in their mind. Of course, this promotes to achieve CPMK 2, 3, and 9. And then in the next stage, we design plan for the project. First, we plan for the course design. I provided some theories related to the course design, and the students have to read the references. They may also find other references out there. And then we had discussion connecting one information to another. So eventually, the students had the framework of how to design a language course. Still in the similar stage as the second plan, students conducted needs analysis. Next, please, Bu. They determined the needs analysis process and then implemented step by step until they created an instrument for needs analysis. After that, the students gained the data, analyzed them, and interpreted them. From this stage, I also provide them with underlying theories, of course, but they are also searched from internet. Yeah. And this stage involves students' abilities in searching for information, filtering information, deciding information. So all actually relate to data literacy skills. Okay, and then the next stage is work on the project and monitor the progress. Here, monitoring students' work is important because they need feedback and sometimes stimulation to make them think more critically in designing the module. Every week, the students reported their progress. And what I did is I asked them, why did you choose that skills, for example? Why did you choose that kind of materials? From where the materials were taken? And then they had to give the justifications, the reasons. Indirectly, the process drives the students to show their communication skills and open-mindedness during the discussion, as well as creativity in the designed product. Okay, and in the next stage, students and I assess the product. Here we had peer and lecturers feedback. We also try out the module, but it was done in the following semester because of the limited time. At the end of the project, we had an evaluation. It is a simple one. So several questions were given to the students to reflect on their experiences during project-based learning. Yeah, most students say that they were trained not only to be ordinary teacher, but as professional one. And then through PBL, they improve not only their cognitive skills, so it's not only about knowledge, as mentioned before, but also critical thinking, time management, even conflict management when they work as a team. They also reflect that technology helped in finding good materials, but they still had to consider whether those materials are appropriate or not, related to the objectives or not. So it can be said that this process shaped the way students think, especially how to connect one thing to another. All right, so what we can learn from the example. Taking a look again in the cognitivism principles and also about the teacher's role. Teacher's role as facilitator, yes. As mentor, absolutely. And then you can see what cognitivism principles that can be fulfilled from the project-based learning that I conducted in the class. But there are two items that were not reached, but it's okay. The ideal project-based learning and connectivism principles might not be reached in one time, but it's possible to be reached. The key point is need more effort to well plan the course, and also, if necessary, integrating the course, so some can be covered in the other course. The last is preparing a comprehensive instructional design. The expectation to have PBL that really gives impact to the students need supporting elements. Yeah, so as teacher, you have to be prepared with all elements. Okay, to conclude what we have discussed in this session, we'd like to emphasize again that advancement in digital technology bring huge impact and change various aspects of human life, including the workforce. Considering the digital disruption that also affects the workforce, we need to prepare the young generation to face the challenges in Industrial Revolution 4.0 and Society 5.0. Of course, this needs support system because the quality of human resources also depends on the quality of education. The first step to achieve high quality education is to reform the teacher education program. How? By employing teaching practices to promote student agency, to give student teachers the experience of learning with the required soft skills and the right mentality. Hopefully, it will create future teachers with professional competence who can transfer the soft skills and mentality needed for personal growth and development to their students. Well, that's all that we can share in this session. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your attention. Here is the references that you may try to search on later. Okay, thank you so much. Back to Ibu Mariam.